And it turned out they were not dry chronicles, but thrilling stories of how the gods mingled with people and literally intervened in the creation of the human race. The AI just translated ancient Sumerian tablets, and the result was truly frightening. In the lines scratched on clay, a version of human history was found that tears apart everything we've been taught. It points to an origin we shouldn't have seen at all, to a history hidden for thousands of years. And now that it has been brought to light, it's impossible to view our origin as before. Tablets locked away by time. For over a century, archaeologists have been unearthing thousands of Sumerian texts from the ruins of Eridu and Nippur. Sumerian tablets are probably one of the most ancient forms of written record that humanity possesses. Many of them were broken into fragments. Others lay in museum storage for decades, untranslated, mislabeled, or simply forgotten. Cuneiform, the oldest known writing system, was terribly difficult to work with. Its signs changed meaning depending on the context, and many words had no modern analogs at all. Even when the symbols could be read, the grammar often looked absurd. Generations of scholars spent their lives deciphering only pieces of text and failed to put together a complete picture. That is why the world never saw this story in its entirety. Everything changed in the year 2025. Machine learning models, trained on thousands of cuneiform inscriptions, became available to researchers. These models did more than just match a sign to a translation. They restored lost symbols, predicted broken endings, and cross-referenced dialects of Akkadian, Babylonian, and Old Sumerian. And suddenly, the tablets that had been silent for 4,000 years spoke again. And what they told was not at all what the experts expected. For years, these texts were dismissed as poetic creation myths. But when the AI glued them together, restored the omissions, and compared the versions, hidden details surfaced. It turned out that the tablets contained records, and very detailed ones at that. They described systems of labor, classifications of people, and procedures involving blood, clay, and a specific purpose. On some tablets, these details were listed as almost ritualistic inventories. On others, the story was presented as a narrative. But in all cases, the same consistent patterns emerged. The first shock was the discovery of multiple origin stories. The tablets did not treat humanity as one single model. Different terms were used, and each was tied to a specific role or function. They spoke of creating forms in the divine image, but immediately divided them by task. Humanity, according to these texts, was not created as a single people. It was divided from the very beginning, and at least one of the groups, to which several passages are dedicated, was created with obedience as its key characteristic. The artificial intelligence highlighted several recurring terms that immediately stood out. One expression can be translated as life bearing a function. Another meant those who do not multiply. A third, a chilling phrase, clay of lesser luminescence. Scholars long believed these were poetic images or symbols. But when the AI restored the context, a completely different picture emerged. Now, some researchers believe these lines describe early humans genetically engineered without the ability to reproduce. If so, it means they were consciously created as a temporary labor force that was never meant to live long enough to pass on its traits. The more fragments the AI restored, the clearer the overall message became. Humanity was not the result of a single act of creation. It was a process. People were formed, refined, destroyed, and reassembled. Some versions were completely written off, erased even before they had a chance to leave a mark on history. The idea that our species was divided, even before it truly appeared, was previously considered a fringe theory. Now, the tablets themselves pointed to it. They contained classifications, names, descriptions, and most importantly, the technology finally existed to stitch it all together. The AI didn't invent these ideas. It merely removed the dust, showing what was already written. It turned a scattering of myths into something more like a blueprint. And this blueprint describes not only how humans were created, it shows quite clearly what they were created for. Humans were created, but not as one species. The myth always sounded simple. The gods molded man from clay. But the newly deciphered tablets tell a different story, one far more layered and much more unsettling. There is no single act of creation. There are stages, trials, failed experiments, and most importantly, variations. People, according to these lines, were not born as a single race. They were prototypes and models, each batch for a specific task. They were not created merely for labor. They were assigned very specific physical functions. The tablets use different words to describe these early humans. It was previously thought they all simply meant man, but the AI noticed subtle distinctions. In some texts, the word Lulu appears, roughly man. In others, Saggig, which one Sumerologist long ago translated as the black-headed people. This phrase was largely ignored for decades, but the AI connected it to another passage describing a group designated for heavy labor, bodies of dark clay, and eyes that ask no questions. Were these symbolic classes or real physical differences? No one can say for sure, but the very fact that the texts so clearly separate groups hints at something more. It seems that even in the first moments of humanity's existence, people were already placed into categories and roles from which they were never allowed to emerge, and it doesn't end there. Other tablets describe the gods, assessing the efficiency of each group. One passage speaks of clay of the restless voice, a variant of man who disobeyed orders and was cast into the rivers. Another mentions a group with limbs too weak to hold tools. They were sent back to the mountains to disappear into oblivion. It's hard not to see an entire system in this. A kind of program that starts with a goal and achieves it not through the creation of equals, but through the engineering of specialized tools. Tools that look like us. The tablets describe a place called Eden, a plain between two rivers. It is considered a kind of factory floor. Each time a new group of people was created, the gods tested them, gave them a name, and sometimes erased them. All these patterns were previously unseen. Scholars only saw scattered pieces. But with the advent of AI, the fragments could be read side by side for the first time. Now it became clear. These are not random myths, but parts of one story. And everything points to the fact that humanity did not have one origin. There were many. Some lines were crossed out, others were remodeled. Still others continue to bear the traits inscribed in them from the very beginning. The genetic modifications that followed. The first humans proved to be insufficient. That is the subject of the next layer of tablets. They worked. They obeyed. But they did not last long. They could not reproduce. Each one had to be created manually, formed from clay, blood, and divine command. They were also explicitly forbidden to multiply. This limitation was part of the design, a way to maintain complete control in the hands of the gods. But at some point, that control began to slip away. The tablets don't explain why exactly. Some speak of rebellion, others of exhaustion. Too many people were dying. Too few could be created in time. The system no longer worked. And then a new order was given, to change the model. The tablets describe this quite directly. Enki, the god of wisdom, decided to revise the design. What Enki did when he conducted the genetic modification, he added something extra to it. His brother discovered it. This time, Enki did not just want to create humans. He wanted to improve them. The new version was supposed to be smarter, stronger, and capable of surviving on its own. And most importantly, capable of reproduction. Thus, a new man appeared. His name was Adapa. Unlike the others, Adapa was not an ordinary worker. He was not molded merely for heavy labor. He was something more. The texts call him chief among men. They speak of him as a man with divine sight and words that move the heavens. Adapa could speak, understand, and lead. His mind was sharp enough to grasp the will of the gods and to obey it. But even Adapa's wisdom had boundaries. He was created to know much, but not everything. And when the time came to test his obedience, the result was irreversible. According to the tablets, the story goes like this. According to interpretations of the Sumerian tablets, the gods were called the Anunnaki. Adapa was summoned to the heavens, where An, the god of the sky, offered him the food of eternal life. But before this, Enki had strictly warned him, do not eat, do not drink, reject everything. And when the moment came, Adapa obeyed. He refused immortality. One decision, one command, executed without question, and the chance to liberate humanity vanished. The tablets also say that Enki gave Adapa knowledge, but withheld freedom. Whether this was a clever move or a precaution, no one knows. But the outcome is simple. Humans will henceforth live, grow, and always die. That is what made Adapa special. He became a bridge, a rupture between a tool and a species. His creation marked the beginning of an even more dangerous line, division. Because not all humans received this update. Some branches of humanity remained bound to heavy labor, unable to think beyond their tasks. Others, created in Adapa's image, received more freedom. They could learn, adapt, even govern. This rift, barely visible in the myths, becomes obvious when viewing the texts through the lens of AI. Now we can read all the mentions together. We see which groups were allowed, what others were merely assigned. The roots of inequality go deeper than history. They lead to the first decisions, not to give everyone the same opportunities. And these decisions would soon ignite a war, not only between humans and gods, but between the gods themselves. The Anunnaki rift, control versus freedom. Not all gods agreed on what humans should be like. The Sumerian texts do not hide this. They speak directly of a schism, a deep conflict, whether to leave humanity forever chained to the task for which it was created, or to allow it to move beyond those bounds. On one side, Enki, the very god who created Adapa, the one who gave humans the ability to reproduce, wisdom, and speech. Enki saw potential in humans. He saw a species that could think, adapt, and evolve. In some texts, he is called the father of humanity. His version of creation was not perfect, but it was merciful. On the other side, Enlil. In the vast pantheon of Sumerian deities, Enlil stands as a colossus, the embodiment of authority and order, the commander of the divine order, the lord of decrees, the god who demanded obedience above all else. Where Enki saw tools capable of learning, Enlil saw only impending chaos. He did not trust humans. He did not want their development. And he hated what Enki had done. The texts describe Enlil's wrath as instantaneous and absolute. For him, humans were rebels. They were breaking the original design, violating the order, and Enki, in his view, had gone too far. The gods began to divide. Some supported Enki, quietly encouraging the growth of human knowledge. Others remained loyal to Enlil, demanding restrictions, reboots, and punishments. Ultimately, the rift ran not only across the heavens, but across the earth. Some people were guided through dreams, through signs. They were revealed the secrets of the stars and seeds, granted writing, counting, and metal. Others were suppressed, returned to heavy labor. Their lineage was kept simple, ignorant, under complete control. The translations made by the AI show striking differences. in how different groups were treated in different regions. In one place, people are described as keepers of the grain and creators of laws. In another, as the nameless, workers whose history was erased the moment they were born. This was controlled development, programmed inequality, and it was driven by a divine fissure that was ever widening. At some point, the tablets describe a point of no return. Enlil, enraged that humans continued to grow in number and skill, made a final decision to destroy them with the Great Flood. Enlil's flood was not a cleansing of the earth. Enlil wanted to destroy humanity. He decided to send a massive flood to wash everything away. It was an attempt to close a project that, in his opinion, had gone too far, to erase the failure and restore the accustomed order. But Enki intervened again. He found a man and warned him. This man would be known in later stories as Ziusudra, Utnapishtim, or Noah. He became the last link in the chain. Enki could not save everyone. He didn't even try. But he saved enough for the human line to continue and for the version of humanity he believed in to survive. However, the war did not end. It merely changed form. Advanced technology in the wrong hands. Stories about the creation of humans already sounded wild. But what came next was even stranger. Deep within the text, between hymns of creation and divine genealogies, lay lines that did not resemble myth at all. They read like records, like reports, descriptions of tools, materials, and systems that in no way fit their time. Now, with the help of AI, these lines have finally become readable. And the questions they raise, no one can fully ignore. How could a 5,000-year-old civilization describe flight? How could they understand how metals behave when heated? Where did they get the words for a light of such intensity that it turns day into fire? One passage describes chariots with wings of wood and metal that roar in the sky and are moved not by wind, but by fire from within. Another speaks of liquid metal sealed in the belly of fire, which moves with a pulse and thunder. For years, such phrases were dismissed as poetry. But when the AI gathered them together, a clear pattern emerged. The same elements repeated over and over: wings, casing, heat, thrust, thunder. The texts nowhere call these devices fantasy. They claim they were given by the gods. And not to everyone, but to the chosen few, those who remained faithful to the divine order, those who proved their usefulness. Knowledge, according to the Sumerian tablets, was not discovered. It was dispensed in doses, and then turned into a weapon. The AI discovered an entire block of lines describing light that burns the earth and leaves no flesh. Another passage speaks of mountains split by fire and cities that disappeared in a single day. For classical science, these were always metaphors about storms, earthquakes, or eruptions. But some researchers are no longer so sure. Now, an increasing number believe the texts describe technologies that humanity did not see again for thousands of years. Metallurgy, powerful energy sources, even atmospheric flight. And what is particularly strange, the knowledge was unevenly distributed. These tools were given to some groups of people. Others were consciously prevented from even approaching them. What kind of civilization is this that hands one group the technology of metalworking, while not even allowing another to master language? The answer, according to the logic of the tablets, is simple and cold. It is not a natural civilization. It is a top-down construct, where humans are not at the center, but at the bottom of the pyramid. And even at that level, there is no equality. Some were meant to govern, others to serve, and those who asked too many questions were simply erased. In one place, there is a phrase, "They were shown the mountain, and the mountain did not return them." We do not know what this means, but we know one thing. The more the AI translates, the clearer the pattern becomes. Technology in the ancient world was not a miracle. It was a lever, a way to separate one type of human from another. And very soon, this separation penetrated even deeper, not just into tasks, tools, or trust, but even into time. The Sumerian warning. The Sumerians were not just builders, scribes, and priests. They were observers. This becomes clear when the AI brings all the fragments together. The Sumerians did not just look at the stars, they tracked them. For approximately 7 centuries, priests in the cities of Ur and Babylon recorded eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and barely perceptible shifts of distant stars. Without telescopes, without modern mathematics, they believed that the sky was not decoration. It was an announcement board, and they were waiting for something. The name that constantly surfaces in these records is Nibiru. He believed that they were essentially extraterrestrial entities from the planet Nibiru, which, in his highly controversial opinion, actually exists in our solar system. In the texts, Nibiru is described as a celestial body with an enormous orbit, returning approximately every 3,600 years. Ancient scholars long considered this pure myth, but now the AI has discovered something new in the texts. Mentions of cycles and long periods, warnings associated not only with the return of Nibiru, but with its consequences. The tablets do not speak of Nibiru as a planet in our sense. They call it the crossing, the destroyer, the one who hides the light, and every time it passes, something changes. When the AI restored the missing lines, a pattern emerged. These warnings were not addressed to everyone, only to certain people. The texts describe those whom Enki chose as guards, observers, silent keepers who lived on the edges of society and passed down encrypted stories from generation to generation. According to these translations, the return of Nibiru is not just destruction. It is a moment when the old order is swept away and a new one is built in its place. And every time this happens, humanity forgets. The stories dissolve. But something remains. The separation. The idea that some groups were intentionally not meant to survive these restarts. That the ancient creators may have deliberately programmed some people for extinction and others for continuation. The forgotten divisions of humanity. The Sumerian tablets do not depict humanity as a single, unified creation. On the contrary, they show people created as separate groups, each designed for a function, for obedience, for a type. This division is not just about culture or tribes. It seems to lie much deeper, at the very beginning of human existence. The texts do not use modern words like race or ethnicity. Instead, they provide classifications. And these classifications are not random. They repeat the exact same pattern across dozens of surviving fragments. These fragments were found in different regions, but each one repeats the same structure again and again. In one passage, a group is called clay of strength. In another, blood of radiance. In a third, shadows formed with silent hands. For many years, scholars read this as beautiful metaphors. But when the AI cross-referenced hundreds of such lines, the context completely changed. The model was too clear to be considered accidental. Each group was assigned properties, duties, and even restrictions. Clay of strength is described as miners and laborers. This becomes the history of our humanity. The Anunnaki literally came to Earth to mine gold. They were responsible for heavy physical labor, and nowhere is it said that any of them held leadership positions or had access to writing. Blood of radiance appears in priestly roles. These are scribes, singers, keepers of the star tablets. They deal with ritual and knowledge. Shadows formed are described as keepers of animals. They were explicitly forbidden to enter temples or touch sacred instruments. The texts speak not only of functions, In some places, these groups are also linked to unusual physical traits. One passage speaks of those born from the scorched horizon, marked by the sun and the earth. Another of the pale dwellers of stone and wind. A third of those walking the red soil, hardened by earth without water. For centuries, all these images were considered merely beautiful pseudo-poetic names. But the AI analysis shows a consistent coincidence. The names of the groups, their functions, and their supposed external features constantly go hand in hand. When viewed as a whole, the texts stop looking like a collection of random myths. They begin to resemble a carefully crafted system of categories of people, each of whom was created for a specific purpose. The AI changed the rules of the game. It created a unified cross-referenced corpus of texts. Through pattern recognition, language modeling, and line-by-line cross-referencing, the scattered fragments turned into a single system. What once seemed like a set of legends now looks like a database of origin. And this database leads to a very uncomfortable conclusion. Not every group was allowed to develop equally. Some were taught language, others were consciously denied it. Some were revealed astronomy, others were explicitly warned, do not look up. Some were allowed to have personal names. Others were named only by their function. These assignments were unequal, and the restrictions were conscious. If all of this was part of a planned system, the conclusion is hard to dismiss. What we now call races may not be the result of chaotic migrations, random mutations, or luck, but a trace of a strict system of control, begun long before familiar history appeared. The artificial intelligence did not invent this idea. It merely showed what was already in the tablets. The age of AI begins. We were not supposed to see this story in its entirety. For thousands of years, the tablets lay half buried in the ruins. Those who found them could not read them. Those who did read them could not read them completely. Those who finished the translation could not connect the pieces into one line. Until now. But to whom was this information addressed in the first place? Why was it hidden? And why, after thousands of years of silence, is it surfacing precisely now? Some scholars say it's just a myth, that the gods never existed, that all these lines about roles and divisions are merely ancient metaphors of power. When you apply the myth to archaeology, cross-reference the descriptions with migrations, bloodlines, and strange jumps in the development of human societies, the coincidences begin to look too precise. And the issue here is no longer whether Enki and Enlil were real beings. The main question is, was there someone or something that structured the origin of our species with a specific goal? What are we then? What do we become if we accept that we were created not in general, but for a task? What started as an innocuous AI translation experiment has turned into a mirror that humanity is very uncomfortable looking into. The Sumerians left behind not only clay and symbols, they left a record of control, a history of division, and a warning that we almost missed. What do we do with this now? What changes when a species suddenly learns why it was created? And which version of that species was originally planned for survival? That concludes our broadcast for today. Be sure to write everything you think in the comments. Let's discuss this topic together and try to solve the mystery. Thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and watch previous episodes on the Top Facts channel.